Okay, so Nick, we've had a question submitted from the website internsanonymous.co.uk, I think is the web address. They are concerned about interns being employed by NPs and being only paid by with expenses, and they aren't getting the national minimum wage. First of all, can I ask if you employ interns?
Well, I'm going to answer the specific question that's asked on the site, which is, do I employ unpaid interns as part of my campaign?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, because you can't employ somebody who doesn't get paid. I think it's a circular question. It doesn't make so no. I don't employ anybody who I don't pay. Everybody who is an employee of my campaign gets paid more than the minimum wage. We do have interns working on our campaign, but that is a voluntary agreement and an arrangement with them. It's not an employment situation.
I think their concern is, and I'm glad that you made the showed the difference there rather, but I think their concern is that a lot of interns are effectively not volunteers. They're expected to do a certain amount of hours a week. They're expected to do certain duties, and it becomes like a full-time job. What would you say in response to that?
Well, I think that's right, and I think there's a valid concern there that there are some people who employ, if you want to use that word, interns, and they are basically the employer expects them to perform as an employee. Yeah. And I think if that's the arrangement, then it's wrong.
Yeah.
The interns which help my campaign, for me, it's about the personal choice of those individuals. They want to come and help and volunteer their time for free, and who am I to say no? If they want to help me out, then that's fantastic. We have hundreds of people across the constituency who deliver leaflets all the time for us, or knock on doors, or make phone calls. Now they're volunteering their time for free as well. If an intern wants to do that during office hours, and work in an office, that's fantastic. I'll accept that help because we need all the help we can get in politics. So I do think there's a valid concern there, but I think that it comes down to personal responsibility and personal choice. And certainly the people that I have helping my campaign are there because they want to be, not because that they feel some obligation as employees.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm sure that's true, and I'm sure your interns are very keen. But I think another issue here is that effectively a lot of young people have no choice but to do unpaid work experience before they can get a full-time job. How would you help graduates to get that employment?
Absolutely, I think that is the testament of a education system which is not equipping our young people with the skills that they need to be employed. For me, it is the state's responsibility to firstly provide economic opportunities where young people can be employed. Okay. And secondly, it's the responsibility to provide an education system which equips them to fulfil those opportunities. Yeah. And I think that there are problems on both fronts there. The government has we haven't gone out of this boom. What was it Gordon Brown said? He said that the end of boom and bust, and it's completely not true. We've seen that over the last couple of years, and I think there are other countries in Europe and around the world who are taking opportunities in new technologies and green technologies which we're not taking as a country, and the government is not supporting those industries sufficiently. I know. I run a business in that sector, and I think that the education sector, I mean, the most common thing that I hear from employers in my constituency is that people are coming out of college, out of university, out of school, and they don't have the basic skills which they require to fulfil the jobs that they've got on offer. And so for me, it's because it's overly prescriptive centrally. Okay. The government, spells out exactly what it wants taught in every lesson. Teachers have to write these lengthy lesson plans. It's all so prescriptive. I think we need to give more freedom to schools and to teachers to teach things which students need to know, equip them for the real world. I think that we would get better educated people that way, rather than it being overly prescriptive from the centre. Okay, thanks, Nick.
I've got a question from Vicky Lawton now. She says, last week saw the closure of a steelmaking factory at Teesside. Job losses neared 1,600, and there are an awful lot of local repercussions beyond that. Should we, do you think, Nick, be taking such measures in the current climate? Would the Lib Dems have okayed this closure?
I think it's really bad news for the country and for the people of Teesside that this factory has closed. And I think it was more than just jobs. I think they had a culture, a community based around that place, and I think it's very sad.
Yep.
My grandmother's from that part of the world.
Oh, right,
Sorry,
okay.
my mother even. My grandmother and my mother are both from that part of the world, and so I know that part of the world reasonably well.
Yeah.
So no, it's absolutely bad news, and we've got a similar situation facing here in Salisbury. We've got the Health Protection Agency employ 800 people at the Porton Down site, and they're currently considering moving those jobs out of the area,
right.
With job losses, and about 800 job losses.
Right.
And it's the last thing that the economy needs. It's the last thing that people who are already struggling in a difficult economic climate need, to be worried about the future of their jobs. Would the Lib Dems have okayed this closure? Well, as I've said, I think it's really bad news. It's not the place of governments or of political parties to stop private businesses closing factories.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what's happened. Now, if it's a nationalised industry, it's a different issue.
Yeah.
But we can not like it, and we can say it's bad news, and we can do everything we can to support the people there, and government should do that.
Mm-hmm.
And
what do you think the government should do?
Well, I think that Mandelson seems to have made certainly sensible noises about this, but they need to provide the retraining opportunities for the people who have lost their jobs, so that they can take new opportunities in their area, and they don't just sit around being unemployed. Nobody wants to do that. The government doesn't want that, and the people who are unemployed don't want that either, who've just lost their jobs. So, no, we wouldn't have okayed the closure, but equally, you can't stop it. All you can do is provide an economic climate which is where those people can take up new opportunities and give them the necessary training, education, etc. to take those opportunities that should be available.
Okay, well, that seems fair enough. Thank you, Nick. Just finally, a question from myself.
Of course.
You're a young candidate. You're obviously quite experienced. You run your own business, but you are quite young. You have arguably less life experience than other MPs. Do you feel young people face a disadvantage if they stand for election? Do they face discrimination? Do they face unfair discrimination, or are some of the questions fair?
I think that there are a small number of people who hold it against you, and I think that's a shame. It has changed a lot in the last 2 years, and that's not just because I've aged from 24 to 26. I think it's genuinely because people's opinions have changed about who they want representing them in Parliament. And before the expenses crisis, I just got all the time on the doorstep, if you're far too young to be a member of Parliament, and a lot of dismissal by older members of the population. Since the MP's expenses crisis happened, there is a real thirst for kind of young blood, like a fresh approach. And I would kind of be cheeky and say, well, okay, we've been represented by these 56-year-olds upwards, and look at the mess that they've got us into. And
it's not because of their age, though, is it?
No, it's not because of their age. But the point is that why should anybody think that we would do young people? Why would we do a worse job?
Okay.
I mean, judgment is more important than experience. Okay. I think that Parliament should represent all of society: the young, the old, the professionals, the public sector workers, teachers, lawyers, or the whole spectrum of society should be represented in Parliament, and young people need a voice, and it's really important that people who are young take that step and get involved politically, and if it's the right thing for them to stand for Parliament, I mean, why not? I mean, we've got something to offer as much as the older generations, and we shouldn't be afraid or kind of put off by people who say that, well, you're too young, because I think we've got something important to offer the country and to offer our local community. So I accept the criticism, the dismissal which people make. I understand why they're making it, but I think that there are 10 times more and better counter arguments as to why young people should be engaged and should be members of Parliament. Yeah.
Okay. Well. We shall see if you become one of those young members. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you very much, Nick, for giving your time to Social Breakfast.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
And hopefully people will be inspired to get involved in these debates. So thank you for your time. Goodbye.